Tahoe Park couldn't sleep. The strange signals from space haunted his thoughts. For weeks now, he had stayed late at Sewell National University's small observatory, while other students enjoyed their summer vacation. Something wasn't right about those patterns. They were too regular, too purposeful to be natural cosmic noise. He adjusted the telescope once more, checking the coordinates against his notes. The signal appeared again, pulsing faintly among the stars. "There it is again," he muttered, quickly recording the data. His professor had dismissed his theories as imagination, but Tahoe knew better. 4 years studying astrobiology had taught him to recognize patterns. This was communication, he was certain. After another sleepless night reviewing his findings, Tahoe needed fresh air. He packed a small bag and headed to the mountains outside Seoul, a favorite hiking spot where he often went to clear his mind. The summer air was heavy with humidity as he climbed the familiar trail, his thoughts still swooning with stellar coordinates and signal patterns. Near sunset, as the sky turned deep orange, something caught his eye. A bright light streaked across the darkening sky. A meteor, he thought initially. But then it did something meteors never do. It changed direction. The light slowed, curved, and began spiraling downward toward the forest below. Tahoe stood frozen, watching as the object disappeared behind a distant ridge. A moment later, a dull thud echoed through the mountains, followed by rising smoke. "That's no meteor," he whispered, heart racing. Without hesitation, he abandoned the trail and headed toward the smoke. The forest grew dense as he descended into the valley. Branches scratched his arms as he pushed through, following the thin trail of smoke still visible through the trees. Night was falling quickly now, but Tahoe's phone flashlight guided him forward. After nearly an hour of difficult hiking, he smelled something strange, like metal and electricity. The trees opened to reveal a small clearing where the earth had been gouged open. In the center sat a craft unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't large, perhaps the size of a small car, but its seamless silver hull gleamed with an otherworldly quality. No rivets, no joined parts, just smooth, continuous metal with strange symbols etched into its surface. One side was crushed and blackened, still smoking slightly. Tahoe approached cautiously, scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. The craft had no visible windows or doors, yet as he drew closer, a section of the hull suddenly shifted. A panel slid open with a soft hiss. "Help," came a weak voice from inside. "Please." Tahoe hesitated only a moment before shining his light into the opening. What he saw made his breath catch. Inside, slumped against what appeared to be a control panel, was a humanoid figure, a woman. At least, she appeared female, with skin like polished silver-blue metal and delicate features that seemed almost sculpted. Despite her clearly alien appearance, her eyes held an unmistakable intelligence. They were large, dark blue, and currently filled with pain. "I won't hurt you," Tahoe said softly, though he wasn't sure she understood Earth languages. To his surprise, she responded in perfect, though accented, Korean. "I am Neri," she whispered, wincing as she tried to move. A dark blue liquid, blood, seeped from a wound in her side. "My ship, damaged." Tahoe's scientific training took over, pushing aside his shock. "I'm Tahoe. I'm going to help you." He climbed carefully into the craft, unslinging his backpack. "Can you tell me what happened?" "Attacked," she said simply, her breathing labored. "Escape pod, emergency landing." Tahoe opened his first aid kit, wondering if human medicine would work on an alien body. He had basic medical training from biology lab, but this was far beyond his experience. Still, pressure on wounds seemed universal enough. "This might hurt," he warned, pressing a clean bandage against her injury. The blue blood soaked through quickly. Nari made no sound, though her face tightened with pain. "You're not afraid?" she asked, studying his face. "Terrified," Tahoe admitted with a small smile. "But you need help. And honestly, this proves everything I've been working on." He secured the bandage with tape. "Can you walk?" "We can't stay here." Neri nodded weakly. With Tahoe's help, she climbed out of the damaged craft. She was lighter than she appeared, almost weightless in his arms. Her skin felt warm, smoother than human skin, with a faint luminescence in the darkness. "We need to hide your ship," Tahoe said, looking around. "People will come looking if anyone else saw it fall." "Cloaking," Neri said, pressing something on her wrist. The ship shimmered and seemed to fade, blending into the forest background. Not invisible, but easily missed unless you knew exactly where to look. Tahoe stared in amazement before collecting himself. "My apartment is a few miles away. Can you make it?" The journey back was slow and difficult. Neri grew weaker with each step, leaning heavily against Tahoe. He worried about her blood loss and whether anyone would see them, but fortunately, they encountered no one on the dark mountain paths. By midnight, they reached his small one-room apartment near the university. Tahoe helped Neri to his bed, then gathered better first aid supplies. As he cleaned her wound properly, he noticed it had already begun healing, far faster than human injuries. "Your technology," he said, nodding toward her now camouflaged ship. "It's incredible." "Standard," she replied weakly. "For us." After drinking water and eating a little food, thankfully she could consume earth nutrients. Neri seemed stronger. She sat up on his bed, observing his small, cluttered apartment with curious eyes. "I should tell you the truth," she said finally. "I am Crown Princess of the Stellar Coalition. There has been a coup on my homeworld." Her voice broke slightly. "My family. They were all killed. I am the only survivor." Tahoe sat heavily on his desk chair, trying to process her words. Not just an alien, but alien royalty. A princess. A refugee from a war he couldn't imagine. "The people who attacked you. Will they follow you here?" Neri's eyes met his, full of worry. "Yes, they certainly will." Tahoe woke to strange clicking sounds. The morning sun had barely risen, but Neri was already awake. She sat cross-legged on his apartment floor, surrounded by small metal pieces. Her hands moved with incredible speed, assembling something from components she must have taken from her ship. "What's happening?" Tahoe asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Neri looked up, her silver-blue face tense with worry. "They found me," she explained, her fingers never stopping their work. "The usurpers have sent hunters. Very dangerous. Hunters." Tahoe sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. "How could anyone know you're here?" "My ship's emergency beacon activated during the crash." Her voice was flat, but her eyes showed fear. "Standard protocol. I couldn't disable it in time. They will trace the signal." Tahoe moved closer to watch her work. The device taking shape looked like some kind of communication tool, with small lights blinking in patterns. "Can you contact your people? Your loyal supporters?" Neri shook her head. "Not from here. Your planet lacks the necessary relay stations." She connected two more components. "This is just a scanner. It will warn us when the hunters get close." For the next day, they stayed in the apartment. Tahoe called his professor with an excuse about being sick. He didn't want to leave Neri alone. Her wound was healing remarkably fast, but she still needed rest. They talked for hours. Neri explained more about her world, a planet called Elsia in what humans call the Andromeda Galaxy. Her people, the Elsian, had mastered space travel thousands of years ago. Earth was known to them, but considered too primitive for official contact. "Then how do you speak Korean so well?" Tahoe asked. "We study many worlds. I have a language implant." She touched a spot behind her ear. "It analyzes speech patterns and helps me communicate." On the second day, they needed supplies. Neri's device showed no danger signals, so Tahoe decided to risk a quick trip to the nearby market. "Stay inside," he told her. "I'll be back in 30 minutes." The market was only 2 blocks away. Tahoe filled his basket quickly. Water, rice, vegetables, and some medicine. As he waited to pay, something caught his eye outside the store window. Two tall men stood across the street, watching the apartment building. Their posture was strange, too stiff and still. Under the streetlights, their skin seemed to shine in an unnatural way. Tahoe paid quickly and took a longer route home, circling around to approach from the back of the building. His heart pounded as he slipped through the alley and up the service stairs. When he burst through the door, Neri was already standing, her scanner beeping softly. "We need to leave," Tahoe said, dropping the groceries. "Now." "I saw them. At least 2 men watching the building. They don't look human." Neri nodded, grabbing the few belongings she had. "The scanner confirms it. Hunters. At least 3. Is there anything we can use to defend ourselves?" Tahoe asked, quickly packing a backpack with essentials. "Not against them. Their skin is armor. They have weapons that could destroy this entire building." Tahoe thought quickly. "The service stairs. We can go down the back way." They left immediately, taking only what they could carry. As they reached the bottom floor, a loud explosion shook the building. Tahoe looked up to see smoke coming from the direction of his apartment. "They're inside," Neri whispered. They ran through back alleys, avoiding main streets. Tahoe led them to the bus station, where they caught a bus heading toward the mountains outside the city. "My family has a small cabin in the mountains," he explained as they sat in the back of the nearly empty bus. "We used to go there for holidays when I was a child. No one has used it for years. We should be safe there." The cabin was simple, 2 rooms with basic furniture, no electricity, but it had a well for water, and was far from any neighbors. As night fell, they sat by candlelight while Neri explained more about her situation. "Your planet is considered primitive by Elsian standards," she said, watching the candle flame. "But you?" She studied Tahoe with those large, dark blue eyes. "Your adaptability is remarkable. Most species would panic if faced with what you've seen." "I'm scared," Tahoe admitted, "but I'm also a scientist. This is, well, it's amazing, despite the danger." Neri smiled for the first time since they'd met. It transformed her face, making her look younger, almost human despite her metallic skin. "The hunters won't stop," she said, serious again. "They are bioengineered for tracking. They can sense my genetic signature." They stayed at the cabin for 3 days, always watching, always alert. On the morning of the 4th day, Neri's scanner began beeping rapidly. "They'd found us," she said. "They fled into the forest immediately." Tahoe knew these mountains from childhood. Every path, every stream, every cliff. He led Neri through dense undergrowth, avoiding the main trails. By midday, they reached a high ridge overlooking a deep valley. Tahoe thought they had lost their pursuers when a figure stepped out from behind a large boulder ahead of them. The hunter was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed red. In its hand was a weapon unlike anything Tahoe had ever seen. They were trapped. Behind them was a steep drop of at least 50 feet. Ahead stood the hunter, already raising its weapon. Without thinking, Tahoe did the only thing he could. He charged forward, surprising the hunter with his speed. He slammed into the alien with all his strength, knocking them both sideways toward the cliff edge. For a moment, they teetered on the brink. Then they fell. Tahoe managed to grab a tree root jutting from the cliff face, stopping his fall. The hunter wasn't as lucky. It tumbled down, bouncing off rocks until it disappeared from view. Hanging by one arm, his body scraped and bruised. Tahoe pulled himself up inch by painful inch. When he finally reached the top, he collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. Neri rushed to his side, her face showing emotions he couldn't read. "You could have died," she said, helping him sit up. Tahoe winced, clutching his bruised ribs. "Could have," he managed to say between breaths. "Didn't." Neri touched his face gently, her fingers cool against his skin. "No one has ever risked their life for me before," she whispered. not without duty or obligation. We should keep moving, Tahoe said, struggling to his feet. There will be more hunters coming. Rain pounded on the tin roof of the old fishing shed where Tahoe and Neri had hidden for the past 2 days. The small structure sat at the edge of a lake, far from the main roads and hiking paths. Inside, Neri worked tirelessly on the communicator she had been building from parts salvaged from her ship. Tahoe watched her work, fascinated by her precise movements. 3 weeks had passed since he had found her in the crashed escape pod. In that time, they had moved constantly, staying ahead of the hunters who seemed to find them no matter where they hid. There, Neri said, connecting 2 small crystals with a thin wire. The device hummed softly and began to glow with a pale blue light. Now I just need to find the right frequency. She adjusted several controls, her fingers moving in precise patterns. The device made a series of soft chimes, then projected a holographic display into the air between them. Strange symbols scrolled across the light. "It's working," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "I can send a message to my loyal guards now." Tahoe moved closer. "What will you tell them?" "My location. That I'm alive. That I need extraction." Her fingers danced through the light, forming symbols. "I'll encode it so only my personal guard will understand." When she finished, she pressed her palm against the center of the device. It pulsed once, then the light dimmed. "Message sent," she said, leaning back with exhaustion. "Help will come." She looked at Tahoe with her large, dark blue eyes. "But it will take time. My people are far from your solar system." "How long?" "At least 2 weeks, if a ship is already in this sector, possibly longer. 2 more weeks of running. 2 more weeks of hunters tracking them." Tahoe sighed and moved to look out the small window. Rain made it hard to see much, but the lake was beautiful even in bad weather. "We'll manage," he said finally. "We've done well so far." That night, as they shared a simple meal of rice and vegetables cooked on a small camping stove, Neri asked about Tahoe's family. He told her about his parents who ran a small grocery store in Busan, his older sister who taught elementary school, and his younger brother still in high school. "You care for them deeply," Neri observed, "even though you live apart." "Of course. They're my family." "Your concept of family is different," Neri said, setting down her bowl. "For my people, genetic diversity is sacred. We seek connections across species to strengthen our lineage. Family is about power and political alliance as much as personal bonds. On Earth, family is about more than genetics," Tahoe explained. "It's about trust and belonging. People who stand by you no matter what." "Like you have stood by me," Neri said softly. She reached across the small space between them and touched his hand. "I understand belonging." The touch sent a strange warmth through Tahoe's arm. He had grown used to her alien appearance over these weeks, even finding her beautiful in her otherworldly way. But this was the first time she had initiated contact outside of necessity. The moment was broken by a soft beeping from her scanner. Nari pulled her hand away quickly and checked the device. "Hunters," she said grimly. 2 of them, moving this way. They gathered their few belongings and slipped out into the rainy night. Tahoe led them along the shore of the lake, keeping to the trees for cover. The rain would help mask their trail, but the hunters had ways of tracking that seemed almost magical to Tahoe. By morning, they had reached the outskirts of a small industrial area. Old warehouses stood in various states of decay, abandoned years ago when the company moved operations overseas. "We need to rest," Tahoe said, noting how Neri's steps had slowed. "Just for a few hours." They chose the most solid-looking warehouse and found a way inside through a broken window. The space was huge and empty except for some old equipment and barrels left behind. Tahoe found a dry corner where they could rest without being visible from the windows. He had just started to doze when Neri shook him awake. "They're here," she whispered. "Both hunters. They've surrounded the building." Tahoe's mind raced. No back exit. No weapons. just empty space, and he looked around desperately. Old chemical barrels. "What are these hunters sensitive to?" he asked. "Sound, heat, and chemical signatures. Their sensory systems are enhanced to track across planets." Tahoe stood up, moving quietly to examine the abandoned barrels. Most were empty, but a few still contained residues of industrial chemicals. He read the warning labels carefully. "I have an idea," he said, "but we'll need to move fast." Using his limited knowledge of chemistry from university labs, Tahoe mixed chemicals from several barrels. The result was a compound that would create an intense flash and smoke when ignited. Nothing deadly, but disorienting. "When they come in, I'll trigger this," he explained. "The flash and smoke should overwhelm their enhanced senses." We run for the west exit. They didn't have to wait long. The warehouse door crashed open, and two tall figures entered, their metallic skin glinting in the dim light. They moved with predatory grace, scanning methodically. Tahoe waited until they were close, then threw a rock to distract them. When they turned toward the sound, he ignited his chemical mixture. The flash was blinding, the smoke immediate and thick. The hunters screamed, a high mechanical sound, and clawed at their eyes. Now, Tahoe grabbed Neri's hand, and they ran, keeping low under the worst of the smoke. They made it outside and kept running until they reached a line of trees half a mile away. Only then did they pause to catch their breath. Tahoe felt a sharp pain in his arm and looked down to see his sleeve had burned away, revealing blistered skin beneath. "You're hurt," Neri said, examining the burn. She tore a strip from her clothing and wrapped it gently around his arm. "It's not bad," Tahoe said, though the pain was significant. Later, as they rested in yet another hiding place, this time an abandoned farm building, Neri watched Tahoe tend to his burn with their dwindling medical supplies. "My people would value your ingenuity," she said softly. "Such traits are desirable." Tahoe looked up, suddenly understanding her meaning. The way she said desirable carried weight beyond simple admiration. "Are you saying?" he began, but couldn't find the right words. "In our culture, showing exceptional qualities makes one a potential match for even royal bloodlines," Neri explained, her eyes never leaving his. "Courage, intelligence, adaptability, these are traits worth preserving." Tahoe felt his face grow warm. "On Earth, we usually just ask someone to dinner first." Neri's melodic laugh filled the small space between them. For a moment, they weren't fugitives running for their lives. They were just two people, finding connection across the stars. 10 days after sending her message, Neri's scanner began to beep in a new pattern. She and Tahoe had found shelter in a remote mountain cave, far from any trails or roads. The hunters had merely caught them twice more, and both were exhausted from constant movement. "What is it?" Tahoe asked, looking up from the small fire he had built to keep them warm in the cool mountain air. Neri stared at her device, her silver-blue face lighting up with hope. "My people. They're here." She adjusted some controls on the scanner. "They've entered Earth's atmosphere using stealth technology. They're looking for my signal. How will they find us?" Neri held up her wrist device. "This will guide them. We need to find an open space for landing." Tahoe knew just the place, a small clearing about 2 miles east, hidden between mountain ridges where local hikers rarely ventured. They gathered their few belongings and set out immediately, moving carefully through the dark forest. They reached the clearing just before midnight. Above them, stars filled the sky in breathtaking display. Neri activated her wrist device, which began to pulse with soft blue light. "Now we wait," she said. Tahoe looked at her in the starlight. After weeks of running together, he had grown to know every expression on her alien face. He could read her moods in the subtle changes of her silvery skin, could tell her thoughts from the tilt of her head. When had the strange become so familiar? "Will you be safe when you return?" he asked. "The people who tried to kill you, they're still out there." "I have loyal supporters. With me alive and back among my people, we can challenge the usurpers." She looked at him with those dark blue eyes. "My family had ruled justly for generations. The people will rally to our cause." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened. Tahoe thought about the university, his research, his family, all the normal things that had defined his life before that fateful night when a princess fell from the stars. How ordinary it all seemed now. "There," Neri whispered suddenly, pointing upward. At first, Tahoe saw nothing. Then a shadow moved against the stars, a darkness darker than the night sky. It descended silently, no engines, no lights, just a shape becoming more defined as it neared the ground. The ship that landed in the clearing was elegant and streamlined, about the size of a small bus. Unlike Neri's crashed escape pod, this vessel showed no signs of damage. Its hull shimmered with the same metallic quality as Neri's skin. The door appeared in the seamless side, opening without a sound. 3 figures emerged, tall and graceful like Nari, but with subtle differences in their coloring and features. They wore what appeared to be armor, though it moved like fabric. The leader stepped forward, immediately dropping to one knee when he saw Neri. The others followed suit. "Highness," the leader said in accented but clear Korean, "we feared the worst." "Rise, Commander Geo," Neri said formally. "This is Tahoe Park. He saved my life and has protected me from the hunters." Commander Geo stood and bowed deeply to Tahoe. "Our people owe you a debt beyond measure, Tahoe Park of Earth." His skin was darker than Neri's, more bronze than silver, and his eyes were amber rather than blue. "Highness, the resistance grows. Your return will inspire many who have gone into hiding since the coup." "The hunters?" Nari asked. 2 teams were sent to Earth. We have neutralized 1 team already. The second still searches for you. They nearly found us several times," Tahoe said. Commander Geo nodded. "They are persistent, but they will not follow where we are going." The other guards were already preparing the ship, moving equipment and securing the area. Dawn was approaching, the sky beginning to lighten in the east. "We must leave before daylight," Commander Geo said. "Earth monitoring systems might detect us in daylight." As they prepared to depart, Nari turned to Tahoe. Her expression was serious, almost formal. "Come with me," she said simply. Tahoe blinked in surprise. "To space. Leave Earth." "Yes." Her eyes held his, unwavering. "Among my people, we have a tradition called soul binding. It is reserved for those who prove their worth beyond all expectations." She took his hand, her cool fingers intertwining with his. "You have done this." Tahoe looked back toward where city lights glowed faintly on the horizon. "My research, my family." His mind raced with all he would be leaving behind. "They will be protected," Commander Geo promised, stepping forward. "We can ensure your family's safety and prosperity without revealing our existence, and your scientific knowledge would be valuable to our resistance. Few humans have your understanding of cosmic principles." Tahoe thought of his tiny apartment, his long nights at the university observatory, his endless search for proof of life beyond Earth, and now that proof stood before him, offering him the stars. "When do we leave?" he asked, his decision made. Nari's face brightened, her skin almost glowing with emotion. She squeezed his hand gently. "There is much you should know," Commander Geo said as they boarded the ship. "The situation on Elsia is complicated. The usurpers control the capital and major defense systems, but many regions remain loyal to the royal family." Inside, the ship was surprisingly spacious. The control room featured no buttons or switches, just smooth panels that responded to touch. The walls themselves seemed alive with information, displaying data in flowing symbols. As they secured themselves for departure, Tahoe felt a moment of panic. He was leaving everything he had ever known. His parents wouldn't know what had happened to him. His research would remain unfinished. The ship rose silently, accelerating upward at a speed that should have crushed them. Yet Tahoe felt only the slightest pressure. Through a viewport, he watched Earth grow smaller, the mountains, then the continent, then the entire blue planet receding into distance. Second thoughts. Nari asked softly, noticing his expression. A few, Tahoe admitted, but no regrets. Once they cleared Earth's atmosphere, the stars became sharper, more brilliant against the perfect black of space. Commander Geo activated the main drive, and suddenly those stars streaked past as the ship accelerated to unimaginable speed. "We will reach Elsia in 9 Earth days," Geo explained. "Time enough for you to learn about your new home, Tahoe Park." In the days that followed, Tahoe absorbed everything he could about Elsian culture, politics, and technology. He learned that the royal family had ruled for thousands of years, balancing the interests of various planetary factions. The coup had been led by a general who believed in aggressive expansion rather than the diplomatic approach favored by Nari's family. Watching stars blur past the viewports, Tahoe began to understand his new significance in a conflict spanning galaxies. He was not just a human scientist anymore. He was potentially the first official link between Earth and an advanced civilization. "Your perspective will help us," Nari told him one day as they studied star maps together. "Sometimes, those from simpler worlds see what we cannot. We become too entangled in our advanced ways, too certain of our superiority." Tahoe smiled. "Is that a polite way of saying I'm primitive but useful?" Nari laughed, the sound like music in the quiet ship. "Perhaps, but in the best possible way." The rebellion lasted 6 Earth months. Tahoe found himself at the center of a galactic conflict, using knowledge no one expected. His human way of thinking surprised the enemy at every turn. "They expect patterns," Tahoe explained to Nari's War Council during their 3rd week of planning. "All your military training follows logical systems, but humans can be unpredictable." The council members looked doubtful. These tall, silver-skinned beings had fought space battles for centuries. What could a human from a developing world teach them? But Nari trusted him. "Show them," she said simply. Tahoe's first plan seemed crazy, attacking the weakest points instead of the strongest, retreating when victory was possible, appearing unorganized when actually following a complex plan. The royal forces pretended to have communication problems, letting the usurpers believe they were catching rebel messages. These fake messages led enemy ships into traps. "It's like how animals sometimes play dead," Tahoe explained when questioned, "or how some birds pretend to have broken wings to lead predators away from their nests." The usurpers had no defense against human thinking. They had studied Elsian military tactics for years, but had never encountered Earth strategies. By the 4th month, the tide of war had shifted. The royal forces reclaimed 3 major cities. By the 6th month, the usurpers surrendered. General Suk, the leader of the coup, was brought in chains before Nari. "You think you've won," he spat, "but your royal line ends with you. Your family is gone. There will be no future ruler after you." Nari smiled, looking at Tahoe, who stood nearby. "You are wrong about that," she said. On the day of Nari's coronation, the great hall of the royal palace was filled with representatives from every planet in the Stellar Coalition. Tahoe watched from a side chamber as Nari entered, wearing the traditional silver robes of her family. The crown, a delicate band of metal that seemed to float above her head rather than rest on it, symbolized thousands of years of peaceful rule. After the ancient words were spoken, and Nari officially became queen, she addressed her council. "Our strength has always come from diversity," she said, her voice carrying through the vast hall. "Today, we embrace this truth more fully than ever." She motioned for Tahoe to join her. Whispers spread through the crowd as the human walked to stand beside their new queen. "This man saved my life when I was alone and hunted on his world," Nari continued. "He fought for our cause without obligation. He brought new thinking that helped us defeat those who would destroy our way of life." She turned to face Tahoe directly. "I announce my intention to soul bind with Tahoe Park of Earth, creating a political and genetic alliance that will strengthen the royal lineage." The announcement caused an uproar. Some cheered, others protested. Soul binding with non-Elsians was rare but not unknown. Soul binding with a species as young as humans was unprecedented. The ceremony took place 3 weeks later. It combined traditions from both worlds. Taiho wore a formal Korean hanbok in blue and gold, while Nari wore traditional royal attire of silver and white. Their hands were bound together with silk from Earth and luminescent fiber from Elsia. 2 worlds, 2 hearts, 1 future, the official said as he completed the binding. What the stars have joined, let no force in the universe tear apart. The months that followed were busy for both of them. Taiho spent hours learning Elsian language and customs. Nari worked to rebuild trust with planets that had suffered during the coup. Together, they created plans for careful, limited contact with Earth. Not full disclosure yet, Taiho advised. Earth isn't ready, but scientific cooperation with key researchers could benefit both worlds. When Nari announced she was expecting children, the news was celebrated throughout the coalition. The royal physician confirmed they would have twins. A miracle of genetic compatibility, the doctor explained. Your species share more common ancestors than we realized. Taiho often found himself looking at the stars from the palace gardens, amazed at how far he had come from that small observatory at Seoul National University. Sometimes he missed Earth, the smell of rain on hot pavement, his mother's cooking, the busy streets of his hometown. But he had sent messages to his family through secret channels, letting them know he was safe and happy, even if he couldn't explain everything. The twins were born on a warm spring day by Elsian reckoning. A boy and girl, both healthy, both with their mother's silvery blue skin and their father's dark eyes. They are beautiful, Taiho whispered, holding his daughter while Nari cradled their son. They are hope, she replied, for both our peoples. The royal children, named Minjae and Yunha in the Earth tradition, and given Elsian names too complex for Taiho to pronounce correctly, became symbols of a new era. Their mixed heritage represented the future Nari and Taiho envisioned, one where different species could learn from each other. One evening, as the twins slept in their nursery, Taiho sat at his desk and began typing on a special device. It connected to what Elsians called the Interstellar Information Exchange, known more casually as Galactic Reddit. He composed a message describing how a human student's chance encounter with an alien princess had changed the fate of an entire civilization. He wrote about their adventures evading hunters, their unique alliance, and the successful rebellion. He ended with news of the twins and his hopes for future relations between Earth and the Coalition. He hesitated before sending it, looking to Nari, who stood watching from the doorway. "Are you sure this is wise?" he asked. "Not everyone will approve of our story." "Post it," Nari said confidently. "The universe should know that connection across differences makes us stronger, not weaker." Taiho pressed send. Within hours, the post spread across thousands of worlds. Within days, it had been translated into hundreds of languages. The story of the human and the alien princess became legendary. Soon, diplomatic missions from dozens of species began arriving on Earth, making careful first contact with selected scientists and leaders. All sought alliances with humans. Now,